Hey everybody, it's Professor Malat. Welcome to week 3. We are chugging right along. So you've read a little bit about how to create your narrative introduction. You've learned a little bit about the writing process. You've done some reading from Malcolm X. You've watched the Stanton TED Talk on the good story. So we are, as I said, chugging right along. This week, I have a few things for you. You're going to be finalizing your first formal essay, which is your literacy narrative. Again, we all bring our personal experiences to the table when it comes to being readers and writers. You might not feel confident as a writer, um, and you're probably not confident writing something that will be read by another person, especially as we progress further into the course and you're writing things that need to be reviewed by your peers. This takes a certain amount of trust, but I promise you, I am a very gentle reader. I, especially for this very first essay, I am very um, understanding and very lenient as far as the grading. I don't want you to be hung up on the grades. I have a whole philosophy regarding grading, but we won't get into that now. Um, so, accompanied with that, I want you to also, once you're done writing your literacy narrative, I want you to take a moment and reflect upon that most recent writing experience. Documenting your experiences in this week's journal prompt called the writer's memo. And I have a few materials that I want you to also expose yourself to so that you understand a little bit more about reflective writing, reflective thinking, and why it's an important thing to do as a writer and as a reader. So this week, the objectives are to practice writing as a process, which includes generating ideas and text, drafting, revising, and editing. Make sure that you apply this understanding and recognition to produce successive drafts of increasing quality. Um, this first one, I'm not requiring a rough draft. You just get it to as good as an essay as you possibly can. And that will help me to gauge where you are in the writing process, in your skill levels and all of that. Um, we will also be employing appropriate conventions for structure, paragraphs, mechanics, and format, employing appropriate conventions for syntax, grammar, punctuation, and spelling. That's why we're doing these grammar readings and grammar quizzes weekly. Hopefully, you're not too frustrated by those little quizzes. They are only 5 questions long, and it's usually pretty easy. You have multiple opportunities to improve your score on those quizzes. Um, you will also be learning, not so much this week, but in the coming weeks, how to acknowledge the work of others when appropriate and to use a standard documentation format when needed. The readings for this week, we have a grammar reading. We're focusing on colons this week. Colons, the signposts, that's from University of Mississippi Rhett Lab. And then there are 2 other readings from Rhett Lab. What is reflective thinking and reflection as academic work? Those will help to prepare you for creating the writer's memo. Um, the videos this week, I have a video. It's an edited video, 15 minutes long. This is from a lecture that I did last year for one of my classes. And then there is a video from somebody else that's only 6 minutes long, again, explaining the whole concept of reflective writing. Grammar quiz number 3, as I told you before, is on colons. And then we have the writer's memo. I want to actually look at the journal number 3 writer's memo assignment so that I can walk you through a little bit um, and explain what I'm looking for. So there's really no one right way to write the writer's memo. Um, the fundamental purpose of the assignment is to help you to reflect on your writing. And this is a way for you to communicate with your primary audience, whether that's teachers or peers, so they can provide you with critical feedback that can help you revise. So I have a list of questions. There are 10 questions. You don't have to go and do a question and answer format if if that's not your thing. Instead, you can compose a letter to an intended reader. Dear reader, blah, blah, blah. Or you could approach your memo as a movie reviewed, or you could even give yourself a grade on this first essay and justify why you deserve such a grade with examples from your writing. The main idea is to get you to think about what you've written, what your process was, and to write a little bit about it. I'm asking that you write a minimum of 1 page. Make sure that it's in paragraph format, not question and answer. Use paragraphs to indicate each new thought and argument. And this is a reflection on the literacy narrative essay. So the questions are: what is the purpose of your essay? Who is your audience and why? What did you do well in the essay? What could you improve upon? Which part of the essay was easiest to write? Which was most difficult? What sentence or paragraph do you think is most effective and why? Or what is your most favorite one? What sentence do you find the least effective and why? Or which one do you hate the most? Did you write the paper all at once or did it come together in pieces? What would you like the reader to look for? That specifically provides me with some guidance about what things you might be concerned about in your writing. If it is you don't know if your sentences are put together correctly or if your paragraphs are effective, you could ask me questions, right? This is to help me in my assessment as well. What have you learned through writing this paper? Perhaps you have learned something, perhaps you haven't. And how have your feelings about writing changed through writing? So the topic here is literacy narrative. So your feelings about being a reader and writer, have they changed through writing this essay? Maybe they have, maybe they haven't, maybe you're not sure. And that's all valid stuff. So that is journal number 3. And then if we go back to the week 3 page, we have the literacy narrative itself. We'll take a moment to look at that, although I think I've talked about this already. So we've read the example literacy narrative from Malcolm X, and you've watched the video by Andrew Stanton, where they both present their experiences of reading, writing, and creating a story. And so now it is your opportunity to create your own literacy narrative, your own story, in which you describe an important moment in your writing life and reflect on how that moment changed you as a writer. Um, so, some of us have had negative early experiences with writing or reading that have affected the ways we feel about those things as adults. I, for one, had a teacher in the 3rd grade who kind of humiliated me for choosing a quote unquote babyish book to do for a book report. And that turned me off reading for many, many years. I no longer enjoyed reading the things that I enjoyed. And I felt very constrained, and it had a very profound effect on me as a reader and a writer. Um, so, I understand having negative experiences, especially early on. Children are very impressionable, and sometimes an experience with a teacher can make or break a student for a very long time. For others, writing might be a treasured skill that comes out of a childhood fascination with language and self expression. Some of us may have experienced the strangeness of language in a foreign country, while others have sat in a writing classroom and felt it little different from a foreign country, something that's very unfamiliar and very remote. It might be confusing. And these are all very valid feelings, very valid experiences, and I want to know about them. So, regardless of our backgrounds, our ideas of literacy often become ingrained deeply as good or bad without much thought from us as how those views came to be. And as a result, many of us have feelings about writing that could benefit from a thoughtful and honest, close self examination. So there are some ideas here. You could narrate an early memory about writing that you recall vividly. For instance, if it were me, I would highlight that third grade experience that I have and really dig deep and think about how that moment affected me profoundly, and then explain why this event is significant to you now. You could also describe someone who taught you to read and write and explain this person's significance in your life. I had one student who wrote about a teacher who absolutely opened the world to them. And so, as I said, teachers can really make or break a student's or a child's future, right? You could also narrate an experience with a writing task that you found or still find difficult and challenging. Maybe you struggled in high school, right? Maybe you hate book reports like I do. you know, Anything relating to reading and writing. And especially those of you who might not have English as your native language. Um, I would love to hear about your experiences becoming a literate person in English, right? And you may still be on that journey where you're working at it to improve your grammar and improve your writing so that it is up to the level that it needs to be a student here in the United States using English as your primary language. Um, so some of the key features for the literacy narrative is you want to use concrete and vivid details, right? You want to use descriptive language. Really focus on the details of the things that are going on in your narrative. It can bring the work to life for readers by providing them with vivid mental images. So think about the sights and the sounds, the smells, the tastes, the textures of the world in which your story takes place. Um, Also, make clear why the incident that you are narrating matters to you now by explaining its significance. If there was something that happened that dramatically changed your path as a reader and a writer, we need to know why that is important now, right? Make sure that your organization, that is the beginning, the development, and the conclusion, is effective, engaging, and clear. You want to be sure that you state your main idea of your essay somewhere in your introduction. You don't necessarily need a thesis, but at least a general main idea. And make sure that your supporting paragraphs relates and supports that main idea. And then, of course, use concrete, vivid descriptions and focus on a specific event. This essay should be between 500 and 750 words. That works out roughly to be about 2 to 3 pages that are typed, double spaced with a 12-point font, 1-inch margins. As I said before, this essay will help to gauge where you are with your writing skills and assess how I can best help you throughout the course of the semester. I know that many students have writing anxiety and they may procrastinate. And the hardest part for those of us who are procrastinators and anxious writers is taking that first step. You just need to write. Don't worry so much about getting bogged down in the particulars. Please just try to write. You provide me with something, then I'm able to guide you in the right direction. Remember, you can always revise and resubmit your work for an improved grade, and that goes up through the complete end of the semester. So there is a rubric, and we'll take a look at that. It's 100 points, so we have 20 points for each of these sections. I'll be looking primarily at your introduction, and then focusing on the literacy narrative, support for your main point, how organized your paragraphs are, as well as a conclusion. So try to focus on those things. And I think that is it for week 3. Just going back in, make sure, yes, we've done grammar quiz, journal 3, and essay number 1. So good luck with your writing. I am really looking forward to reading all of your essays. If you have any questions, you know how to get in touch with me. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.